chapter 6, and this is the secret language of us.
Yeah, welcome. It's good to have you with us.
So this is a great chapter because, before you got married, life was just about me, myself, and I. And now you get into marriage, and now it's about ours and us.
Yeah, we, together.
Us.
And
this is us.
Fights are disagreements, and disagreements come from us not
being in agreement.
That's right. And
that would be the most of the fights.
And those disagreements come from seeing things differently.
Yes.
And seeing things differently come from our history, our backgrounds, who we used to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's jump right into it. Matthew 18:19 says, "Again, I say to you that if two agree on earth concerning anything that they ask, it will be done for them by my Father in heaven." So it's coming into agreement in our marriage.
It is.
And
we have to learn how to speak the same language.
Yes.
And here's the problem: is we learned our language from our family, from our culture, from our traditions, our customs, the way we were raised,
right,
the way she was raised, and there's differences. And we want to talk about those differences because there's a way to get around these deep-rooted differences.
I've heard so many times, well, this is how my family did. This is how my parents, ran Thanksgiving, and this is what we did, and we went here and we went there, and well, this is how my family did Christmas, and we always did Christmas Eve, and those are kind of like event things, but still,
no, it's totally true. Or
I think some of the biggest arguments and fights come when it's that kind of stuff coming up in our lives.
And maybe you hear things, couples we talk to all the time, where we're like, well, I married an Italian man, and I'm Mexican. And so we have completely different cultures and ways of thinking.
Yeah.
And so also, no matter what, every family, they talk a lot about blended families right now.
That's true.
And blended families are when one family brings some kids in and into the marriage, and another family brings some kids into the marriage, and then you're blending things.
Yeah.
But I really believe that every family,
well, we're all blended, are we?
Is a blended family. Let's take all of my history, my culture, my custom, my tradition. The way I think, the way my parents did things, and let's take all of hers and let's put it all in a blender, and then we hit the crush button. And okay, now let's see if this works.
Right.
You're blending all these things together. So God says to Abram, this is kind of where we're going to be this chapter. Mm-hmm. God says to Abraham, I want you to, chapter 12, verse 1, go from your country, right? Leave your country, leave your people and your father's household, and go to the land I will show you. And this is God's very first marriage advice and conversation with Abraham. He was saying, we're going to create something new. I remember when I was a kid and we'd get to go out to eat every now and then, and I remember going to the buffet at the Royal Fork, and I get the cup where I could go make my own soda, and they had the fountain drinks there, and that was new back then. And me and my brother would mix all the sodas together. We'd mix root beer and you remember? It was called a suicide.
Yeah.
And no matter what, you would pretend like it was the best thing ever, but it never tasted as good. It never did. Nobody wants a suicide drink. God is not trying to make a suicide drink out of your marriage. He's not trying to just mush it all together and see what happens. God wants to give you a new cup. He always talks about this in the Bible, right? You don't want to put the old into the new. You don't want to put the new into the old. We're not going to mix these things up. He's like, we're creating something brand new, and we're starting with a clean slate. And so the way we're going to do that is we're going to learn how to let go of some old things in order to become a new thing, right? And so really that's what we're going to be talking about. Let's kind of get into the very first part of it. Is move away from your country. I found this interesting. Back in Abraham's time, before the mass media and texting and phones and the news, and if a group of people moved away from another group of people, like maybe a tribe divided or Abraham and Sarah leaving, historically speaking, they would find that as they separated, over time, they would actually develop different languages. That the language would change and alter. It would become a new language over here from the old one.
Yeah.
And if it was separated long enough, it would become so entirely different that there's no way they could even understand each other. And isn't that interesting that God said, okay, but I want you to take a separation, right? I want you to leave your country, because why? Because I'm creating something new. I want to create a language that you two can speak, because there's power in that agreement. Matthew chapter 16 says, if anyone wants to find himself, he must first lose himself. And so you love where you come from, but you're letting go. You're not you love it, right? You honor it. It's cool. It's great.
Well,
Your past, your history, it's fine. But you are going to let go. You celebrate it, but you are moving on. I grew up really, really poor. That's just how I grew up. And some extended family, after 18 years of marriage, came over to my house. I hadn't seen them since I was a kid. And, he got to my house, knocked on the door, and he looked at all that God had given us and the blessed life that we have. And the first thing out of his mouth was, you've forgotten where you've come from, haven't you? And it really hit me so hard. Like, it almost pulls you back into that world. I didn't forget where I came from.
Right.
I am a new creation. God had more for me. God did not have a life of poverty for me. He wanted to pull me out of that place. And I had let go of some old things so that God could create something new.
Yeah.
But isn't that the phrase we hear sometimes, is saying, you've forgotten who you are. You've forgotten where you've come from.
Yeah. I just want to jump in here and say one thing is have grace for each other when you are making some changes that maybe you grew up a certain way. I know an example for me. I had a family that, I'm the oldest. I have 4 younger brothers. And when there was an argument or a fight or a big something that happened, we got really mad at each other. We went our separate ways and we all cooled down. And then when we came back, we were all good. But this is complete opposite of Jason's family.
Oh, yeah.
Jason's family, they would argue. And then when they came back together, there was a reconciliation. There was, I'm so sorry. My family never did that. Yeah. We never did the talk out thing. And so imagine when we get married, we get in a big, huge fight. I go my way. I cool down. I get all okay. Well, I come back. And he wants to talk it through. And I'm like, why do we have to talk this through? I'm fine.
You may be fine, but I need to say I'm sorry. I need a sorry. We need hugs. We gotta.
There was a period of time that I really had to wrap my head around what a reconciliation was. Because here's the thing: I have a very loving family. I have a very close relationship with all my brothers and my mom and dad. But we never had that little part that you had grown up with.
Yeah. And so the differences, small and big differences can, the thing is it's when it's part of something you were or who you are, it's almost unchangeable. And so the idea that you're going to make a conscious effort to let go in order to have a new language of us is super important. That you go, okay, well, this is how I did it. This is how you did it. But how do we do it? How do we want to do it? What do we want to define who we're going to be? Because we don't have to come up with the blurry version of us just mushed together.
Right.
We could just go, well, why don't we be this? Right. Or this is what Bible says that we are. Because sometimes our old culture and way of doing things is maybe not even biblical. And you go, well, what does God say we should do as a family? Or you go to God's house and you learn something new about how a family should operate. And you go, okay.
Yeah.
Can we be flexible and say, am I willing to depart from the way I always was raised, how I was raised, or are we willing to depart from some of those things if maybe they're not the right things for our future? That's what we mean by leaving. And so it says, leave your people. One of the things that happens when we become us is there used to be my friends and your friends, and I know marriages that do great where they still have my friends and your friends.
Yeah.
But what we're talking about here with leaving your people is having our friends. Right? We, us, not my friends and your friends. And what this is about, everybody has a secret place. And if I keep my BFF, is that the right phrase, BFF?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And that's where my secret place belongs, then my secret place is not here.
Right.
And so I have to create some space from the relationships I used to have. I'm not rejecting my friends. I'm not that's nothing to do with that. It's just that my secret place just moved. You get my secret place now. You're my new BFF. And you're the only one that gets the deep, deep access of my heart. So that's what we're really kind of talking about.
Exactly.
And then sometimes you might have friends that it just doesn't seem to work out in your relationship for those friends to be part of your relationship. A lot of times who we're around has to change. It'll change normally. You're in first grade. Those friends that you had when you were in the first grade, you don't hate them. You're just not around them anymore. You grew up. And so also when we get married, we find that maybe not every friend is going to be part of our future. Right. It doesn't mean you're better than other people. It doesn't mean that you reject other people. We always love people. Right. But God's going to be sorting out, and we need to be open to the idea that God might have new friendships and relationships that are meant to elevate us and draw us up higher. And then we also need to leave our father's household. That was the third part of this scripture. A man should leave his father and mother, is what it says in Genesis, and cleave to his wife. And so, if you had a great mom, a great dad, bad mom, bad dad, whatever your family is, you find that parents don't always let go right away.
Yeah, that's hard.
They want to press in, and I get it. I'm a parent. And they want to press in and give advice and be part of your... It seems like they're trying to weave themselves into your marriage. Yeah. And you still love them, but you remember that your marriage is built of a cord of three strands. That's what it says in Song of Songs. And that's Jesus and each other. There's no room for an extra weave in there. And I know when a father gives a bride away, maybe they had a great relationship. It's the wedding day. Who gives this man, this woman to be married to this man? And he's like, I do. That was easy, that process. It was at the wedding. But maybe the heart is going to take a little while longer. I find some marriages have a lot of tension because we haven't made that conscious choice that, okay, it's just us two now. I remember there was a night you were in labor and it was with our first, March 11th, 1997. And it was through the middle of the night you were in labor. And everybody had gone home. Moms had gone home. Dads had gone home. My whole life, when I was in trouble, I could call my mom and dad. You could call your mom and dad. And they would be there to rescue us. But this night, everyone was in bed. And there was no one to lean on. And you were in labor. And I remember walking the halls of that hospital. And you had that little IV. And I would push it along. And it was connected to your wrist. And I felt so helpless. And for 8 hours, we were up all night. You were in labor. And you would lean against the glass and take a breath. And you were in pain, having a contraction. And there's something magical happened that night because I think that night you really learned how to lean into me for strength. And I had no one else. We just had each other. And something magic happened in our relationship because we just had each other. It was just us two and God. That was it. There was no one else. And I think that's the moment I really wanted to get to in this chapter. Is you got to get to that place where you've learned how to become us, we, together, and how to lean into each other that way. Please. So what about in-laws? How do we deal with each other's families? How do I deal with your family? How do you deal with my family? What's that look like? It's a great question. There's a concept here we really want you to get when it comes to most people. A lot of fights about in-laws. Lots. Yeah, fights about in-laws. And it's it's very natural in today's society. And I think maybe forever, but the dad, the husband hates the mother-in-law or whatever, complains, and the wife hates the mother-in-law or whatever. And what we want to do is eliminate all the fights about extended family. Just eliminate them all. Yeah. And so here's the secret. You have to remember this. This is what my dad taught me, is that she is the product of her family and upbringing. Now, she may complain about her family or her upbringing. Your wife might. No, she doesn't, but let's say she did. She might be mad at her brother, mad at her mom, mad at her dad. Something went wrong. That's fine. But when I start to say bad things about her family, it actually attacks the very deepest part of her. Because that's where she came from. And what happens is when someone attacks your family that you grew up with, your natural response is to defend your family. That's a natural response. Yeah. So now you're going to have a pretty serious fight. Yeah. So the key is that she can fight with her family. What comes out of my mouth is, oh, hon, you have such a great family. They're so wonderful. Right. I only unconditionally love everybody on her side of the family. That's it. That's my job. And vice versa. And then if my brother were to be mean to her or mean to one of my kids, or he would never do that, but let's just say you're in a scenario where, your brother or sister was being mean or attacking you or hurting my wife's feelings. Yeah. My job is to go after him and attack him. Hey, right? Get off my family.
Yeah.
My job is to defend my marriage. Her job is to calm me down. Oh, he's just probably mad. Just let it go. Who cares? That will work. But if I get mad at her family, even if she's mad at her family, even if she seems like she wants me to agree with her, don't fall for the trap. Don't agree. Defend the other person's family as much as possible. Does that sound right?
Oh, yeah, it's right on.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see you next chapter.